What does it look like? Exploring proficiency levels and numbers and operations. Remember that your students bring background knowledge about addition, subtraction, and algebraic thinking to the classroom. Simultaneously, your multilingual students also bring their level of language development. You just have to be willing to explore different ways of finding out their content knowledge and their language level proficiency. Questioning helps teachers understand what students already know as well as what they have learned. When students get an opportunity to answer different types of questions, this lets students test, confirm, or modify their own understandings. It's very hard to meet this goal of understanding unless your questions are structured in a way that produces a response from students. Let's look at some examples that can support different language proficiency levels. These are based on WIDA, Can-Do Guiding Principles of Language Development. Notice how the level of what a student can do would be based upon the level of their listening. We are not changing the math, but we are changing what we expect the students to do with the language. The following examples show the teacher how to use the can-do language levels as part of student assessment. For example, let's say a student is at entering language level 1 in listening. At this level, students are only going to be able to point or mimic. So a teacher will present an assessment that requires only a simple response. At a higher level of language proficiency in listening, a teacher could orally describe a pattern, and the student could recreate it. The math doesn't change. All students have to be able to do the math, but how they can express their knowledge will vary. Let's look at beginning level 2 speaking. What numbers should we add to 6 to make the number 7? Ask your students to draw the number or pick up the number of beans to make this number sentence true. They should know the basic number words at this level, so when they have found the answer, they could say the number sentence, 6 plus 1 equals 7. They could also repeat a sentence the teacher models, such as, I need 1 more bean. In comparison, a student at a speaking level of 4 or 5 would have enough language skills to respond to the following. Are these the same amounts? How do you know? Use the beans to solve the problem. When you have an answer, explain how you solved it. Next, let's look at what you could expect from a student whose language development in reading is a level 3 or developing. You would direct your students, working with a partner, put these sentence strips in order so that they tell a story. If the strips are different colors, students will find them engaging, and you can assess their understanding quickly, even in a large group. Note, at level 4, you could use sentence strips without the pictures. This is an example of matching phrases to pictures, which is level 3 in language development in reading. This activity could also be used to assess the math knowledge of students at a lower level of language development if they work with a partner. Then you could follow up with this activity to test their mathematics knowledge. Be sure to talk about the word pattern with lots of visual examples. Level 4 expanding in writing. This activity is assessing students' math level. You would ask, how many squares are there? Write an equation or number sentence to total the number of squares in the picture. With students at a level 4 in writing, number sentence is a more familiar term to write. Students at a level 5 in writing should be using the word equation, which is a more formal mathematical term in their writing. These next 2 activities provide an opportunity for a student to practice their listening and speaking, and then their writing. Talk with a partner to compare and contrast odd and even numbers. Write an odd number and draw a picture of something that represents that amount. Do the same with an even number. Level 4 and Level 5 multilingual partners should be able to do this activity. If they are at a level 2 or 3, multilinguals should be partnered with native speakers. This activity assesses writing. Now you and your partner think of an equation or number sentence that uses addition to show that the sum is odd. Write another equation using addition that shows an even sum. Next, use the equations to explain your thinking. These sentence stems will help those who are still mastering academic mathematics language. You will find more examples in the downloadable resources area in this week's Explore. Here is an extension activity that requires your students to write. Create a little story about your number sentence and act it out with your partner, or draw it out on paper. Next, let's move on to the second Explore activity using a pre-assessment model.